have the arms like I used to, but they're coming back. But I don't want all that weight. I want health. I want you to know that I'm on 0 medications. My blood pressure is 120.
Bishop Eddie Long was once a giant in the world of faith, leading one of the largest megachurches in America. But beneath the sermons and the wealth, dark rumors swirled, rumors that could destroy his legacy forever. Now, in a shocking twist, his own son has come forward, confirming the very secrets people feared. What was really happening behind the scenes of Eddie Long's empire, and how did it all come crashing down? The surprising roots of Eddie Long. Bishop Eddie Long's rise to prominence in the world of faith didn't come from the smooth heavenly path you might expect. Born in Charlotte, North Carolina, in 1953, Eddie was raised in a deeply religious home. His father, Reverend Floyd Long, was a Baptist minister, and his mother, Hattie, instilled strict Christian values in their household. But for Eddie, the path to ministry wasn't always clear. In fact, he originally had his eyes set on something completely different: the corporate world. Yes, the man who would one day lead thousands through fiery sermons didn't start out wanting to become a preacher at all. In high school, a guidance counselor once told him he wasn't college material, crushing his spirit. But then, just as life would often show him, another opportunity arose. Another counselor saw a potential in him and helped Eddie get into North Carolina Central University, where he pursued a degree in business administration. With his diploma in hand, Eddie aimed for success in the business world, landing a job at Ford Motor Corporation as a sales representative. However, this corporate dream didn't last long. Allegedly, Eddie was caught submitting expense reports for personal phone calls, a seemingly small mistake that led to his abrupt exit from Ford. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Eddie's early missteps in the corporate world led him back to his religious roots. Feeling lost, he decided to pivot toward ministry, a decision that would change his life and the lives of thousands of others forever. In 1981, Eddie was officially licensed to preach, marking the beginning of what would be a highly public and controversial spiritual career. Eddie's journey was not without questions, though. While he continued to rise through the religious ranks, some of his claims were met with skepticism. For instance, Eddie earned several honorary doctorates throughout his career, but his most controversial claim was that he had a doctorate in pastoral ministry from the International College of Excellence, an institution not accredited by recognized educational bodies in the U.S. This raised eyebrows, with many questioning the legitimacy of his title. Was Eddie Long truly the scholar he portrayed himself to be, or were these honorary titles part of a larger image-building effort? This duality between Eddie's early corporate struggles and his eventual rise in the church adds layers to his complex persona. How did a man who faced so many obstacles in his youth end up leading one of the largest congregations in America? And could those early setbacks have shaped the way he navigated the controversies that would later come to define his career? Before we answer those questions, let's move into the next chapter of Eddie Long's story, the incredible rise of New Birth and the scandals that came along with it, how Eddie Long built his empire. In 1987, Eddie Long took over as pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, a relatively small congregation with around 300 members. No one could have predicted what was about to happen. Eddie had a unique vision, and it wasn't just about spreading the gospel. It was about expansion, growth, and influence. Within a few years under Eddie's leadership, New Birth became one of the fastest-growing churches in the country. By the late 1990s, the congregation had swelled to over 25,000 members. It was a growth that defied expectations, especially considering that 40% of these members were African American men, a demographic often underrepresented in church attendance. But Eddie wasn't content with just building a congregation. His ambition stretched far beyond the walls of the church. In the early 90s, he spearheaded massive construction projects to accommodate the growing numbers. In 1991, New Birth opened a 700-seat sanctuary, but even that wasn't enough. By 1999, they added a family life center that could hold 5,000 people, and just 2 years later, the crown jewel of Eddie's empire was completed: a massive 500-seat megachurch located in Lithonia, Georgia. This wasn't just a place for Sunday services. It was a full-scale religious complex, a hub for everything from youth outreach to fitness programs. New Birth had its own credit union, a school, and even a fitness center. Eddie's vision wasn't just about spiritual empowerment, it was about empowering the whole person, body, mind, and soul. But there was another side to this empire. Eddie's approach to ministry was deeply tied to the prosperity gospel, a controversial doctrine that links faith to material wealth. According to this belief, God rewards the faithful, not just with spiritual blessings, but with financial success and good health. Eddie embodied this message to the fullest. He drove luxury cars, including not one, but 2 Bentleys, and wore designer clothes, even while preaching from the pulpit. He was unapologetic about his lavish lifestyle, even addressing critics directly in his book, What a Man Wants, What a Woman Needs, where he said he bought the second Bentley precisely because people were upset about the first. His personal lifestyle raised questions about the true focus of his ministry. Was it about spreading the gospel, or was it about building personal wealth? Eddie's defenders would argue that he was merely following the principles of prosperity gospel, that God wanted him to live in abundance. But for others, his flashy lifestyle became a symbol of the very excesses they feared in modern televangelism. One thing is certain, Eddie Long's rise in the religious community was meteoric, but it wasn't without controversy. Behind the scenes, there were whispers about his financial dealings, particularly regarding the management of the millions of dollars that flowed through his nonprofit, Bishop Eddie L. Long Ministries, Inc. Between 1997 and 2000, Eddie reportedly received over $3 million in compensation and benefits from the nonprofit. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution conducted an investigation, and when the findings were made public, many people were shocked. The report raised concerns about how charitable funds were being used, especially when the donations were coming from churchgoers who believed their money was going towards spiritual missions. Eddie defended the compensation by claiming that the money came from royalties, speaking fees, and large donations, not from church tithes. However, after this scandal broke, donations to the church took a hit. Even loyal members began to question where their money was really going. As Eddie's financial empire grew, so did his political connections. He began to rub shoulders with influential figures, including heads of state and other high-profile clergy members. One of the most significant moments in his political career came when he was invited to a breakfast with President George W. Bush, along with other prominent black clergy. The topic? New roles for U.S. churches in Africa. This invitation was a sign that Eddie had transcended the role of a local pastor. He was now a figure of national and even international importance. But even as Eddie's influence expanded, the cracks in his empire were starting to show. The financial controversies were only the beginning. What came next would forever change the way the world saw Eddie Long. As we move into the next chapter, get ready for the scandals that would ultimately lead to Eddie's undoing. What were the accusations that rocked the foundation of New Birth? And how did Eddie respond when the truth came crashing down? The scandals that shattered his legacy. In 2010, the facade of Eddie Long's empire began to crumble. 4 young men, Anthony Flagg, Maurice Robinson, Jamal Paris, and Spencer LeGrande, came forward with shocking allegations of sexual misconduct. According to their lawsuits, Eddie had used his influence as a pastor to coerce them into sexual relationships. These men claimed that Eddie had groomed them through the church's Longfellows Youth Academy, a program designed to mentor young men. The accusations were damning. Gifts of expensive cars, luxury trips to places like Kenya and South Africa, and even biblical verses allegedly used to justify the inappropriate relationships. The power dynamic in these alleged relationships was clear. Eddie Long, with all his wealth, influence, and spiritual authority, allegedly manipulated these young men who were searching for guidance and a father figure. Spencer LeGrande, one of the accusers, shared that Eddie told him, "I got you, I will be your dad," filling the void left by his absent father. But according to LeGrande, that relationship soon took a dark turn. The lawsuits painted a disturbing picture, but it's important to note that Eddie denied all of the allegations. He settled the lawsuits out of court for an undisclosed amount. And crucially, the settlement came with no admission of guilt. Legally, Eddie never admitted to any wrongdoing, but the damage was done. The settlement silenced the accusers, and Eddie's congregation was left with unanswered questions. This scandal hit particularly hard because of Eddie's public stance against homosexuality. For years, Eddie had been a vocal opponent of gay rights, even leading a march in 2004 to advocate for a constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. The Southern Poverty Law Center had even labeled him as one of the most homophobic black leaders in the anti-gay movement. To have these accusations surface, allegations of relationships with young men, was a betrayal of everything Eddie had preached. Despite the shocking allegations, Eddie retained a significant portion of his congregation's support. But New Birth would never be the same. The church that had once been a symbol of growth and empowerment now stood at the center of a scandal that shook its very foundation. Members began leaving, and donations plummeted. The empire Eddie had spent decades building was slowly crumbling around him. Was Eddie Long the victim of false accusations? Or was there more to the story than the public would ever know? How did the man who preached against homosexuality end up embroiled in allegations that went against everything he stood for? And if these allegations were true, how much of Eddie Long's ministry was built on a facade? Inside Eddie Long's troubled family life, while Eddie Long's public life was characterized by immense power and influence, his personal life was far more turbulent than many knew. Behind the charismatic preacher who commanded the attention of thousands, Eddie's family life was marked by strife, allegations, and heartbreak. Eddie's first marriage to Deborah S. Houston began in 1981, but it quickly unraveled. After just 4 years, Houston filed for divorce, and the allegations she brought against him were nothing short of shocking. According to court documents from Fulton County Superior Court, Houston accused Eddie of cruel treatment and claimed she feared for her safety due to his violent and vicious temper. These were serious accusations that painted a very different picture of the man many saw as a gentle spiritual leader. Houston reportedly fled the family home in Fairburn, Georgia, with their young son, Edward Long, to escape Eddie's alleged abuse. Although Eddie vehemently denied the claims, the court granted Houston custody of their son in 1985. Later, this chapter in Eddie's life was quietly swept under the rug as he continued to rise in the religious world, but the shadow of these allegations remained. In 1990, Eddie married Vanessa Griffin, and their union seemed, at first glance, to be a stable one. Vanessa was often by Eddie's side at church events, and she played a significant role in New Birth's ministry. However, as with many aspects of Eddie's life, the facade began to crack. The sexual misconduct allegations that surfaced in 2010 shook not only Eddie's public image but also his marriage. The accusations hit Vanessa hard, and in December 2011, she filed for divorce, citing a marriage that had been irretrievably broken. The divorce proceedings became a public relations nightmare. On the same day, Vanessa's attorneys confirmed her intent to proceed with the divorce. New Birth's PR firm released a conflicting statement, claiming Vanessa had reconsidered and withdrawn her petition. This confusion only fueled speculation about the state of their relationship and whether the church was trying to manage the situation behind closed doors. Eddie, for his part, announced that he would take a leave of absence from his ministry to focus on family business and work on saving his marriage. But despite his public statements, New Birth Christian Academy, which Eddie had founded, soon closed its doors due to a lack of donations, leaving many to wonder if the financial strain caused by the scandals had impacted more than just his personal life. Surprisingly, in early 2012, the divorce proceedings took another turn when Vanessa requested the dismissal of her petition. While the specifics of their reconciliation remained private, Vanessa made a public appearance at the Heart to Heart Women's Ministry Conference at New Birth in September 2012. There, she spoke about her internal struggles during the time she considered divorce and shared her decision to remain in the marriage, framing it as a personal journey of faith and forgiveness. Her return to Eddie and New Birth was a surprising move. But while the external appearance of unity was restored, Eddie was facing yet another battle behind the scenes, this time with his health. As the sexual misconduct allegations were still lingering in the public's mind, Eddie's physical appearance began to change dramatically. He lost a significant amount of weight, sparking rumors that his health was in rapid decline. In August 2016, he attempted to quell concerns by releasing a video in which he explained that he had adopted a vegan diet, attributing his weight loss to this lifestyle change. To reassure his followers, he even performed bicep curls in a gym, projecting an image of vitality and strength. But despite Eddie's attempts to present a healthy front, his gaunt appearance was hard to ignore. Just a month later, the narrative shifted when a church spokesperson admitted that Eddie was facing a health challenge. The details were vague, and the exact nature of his illness remained a closely guarded secret. This secrecy persisted until his death in January 2017, when it was revealed that Eddie had succumbed to an aggressive form of cancer. Even in death, the church remained tight-lipped about the specifics of his illness, which only fueled further speculation. How long had Eddie known about his condition? And did the stress from the numerous scandals and controversies contribute to his declining health? Eddie Long's personal life was filled with contradictions. He was a man who preached strength and prosperity, yet behind closed doors, his family faced profound struggles. The toll of these struggles, combined with his public scandals, left many wondering whether Eddie Long's personal legacy could ever be disentangled from his public one. But the story doesn't end with Eddie's death. His son, Edward Long Jr., would soon step into the spotlight, facing his own battles in the shadow of his father's complex legacy. Eddie Long's son breaks his silence. When Eddie Long passed away in 2017, many in the congregation expected his eldest son, Edward Long Jr., to step into his father's shoes and continue the legacy at New Birth. After all, Edward had grown up in the church, starting as a janitor when he was just 4 years old, and working his way through various roles in the ministry. But Edward's path wasn't as straightforward as people thought. In the years before Eddie's death, Edward had been pursuing his own passions, primarily in music and media. He had even landed a syndicated radio show, which was beginning to gain momentum. However, about a decade earlier, Eddie had called on Edward to set aside his personal ambitions and join him in ministry. Reluctantly, Edward gave up his radio show and music career, believing that his father had a divine vision for him. Yet after Eddie's death, it became clear that the church leadership had other plans. Instead of appointing Edward to lead New Birth, the board selected Bishop Stephen A. Davis as Eddie's successor. The decision blindsided Edward, leaving him feeling overlooked and undervalued. To make matters worse, Davis's tenure as leader of New Birth was short-lived. But even after his resignation, Edward's hopes were dashed again. This time, the leadership passed over Edward in favor of the controversial Baltimore pastor Jamal Bryant. The rejection hit Edward hard. In a candid sermon delivered after his father's death, he opened up about the deep disappointment he felt. He admitted that for 2 years he had struggled with what he thought was depression, the weight of being the son of a megachurch pastor, the pressure to live up to his father's legacy, and the repeated rejections from the church leadership all took a toll on him. Edward's emotional transparency during that sermon shocked many in the congregation. He spoke about feeling more appreciated outside the church than within it, and admitted that he had considered stepping away from New Birth altogether. However, despite the pain and disappointment, Edward refused to speak ill of Jamal Bryant. Instead, he prayed for him and urged the congregation to do the same, framing his forgiveness as a reflection of the lessons his father had taught him about grace and love. But Edward's journey wasn't just about dealing with rejection. Over the next few years, he began to carve out his own path, separate from the shadow of his father's legacy. In 2019, Edward returned to his first love, radio, and launched Lit Nights with Ed on Praise 102.5, a program that allowed him to blend his passion for music, radio, and ministry. His show targeted Gen Xers, millennials, and night owls, providing urban inspiration with a faith-based message. He had spent years pursuing industry professionals, leaving notes, business cards, and demos until his persistence paid off. His return to radio wasn't a detour. It was the fulfillment of a long-held dream that had been put on hold for ministry. But Edward didn't stop there. He began experimenting with new, unconventional ways of reaching people. One of his most notable ventures was launching a monthly Bible study group called Wine and the Word, held in non-traditional venues like clubs. This innovative approach allowed him to connect with people who might never set foot inside a traditional church. The topics covered during these Bible studies were as varied as faith, relationships, and the complexities of creation, often sparking heated discussions. Through these efforts, Edward has managed to build a unique ministry that stands apart from his father's. He has found a way to honor Eddie Long's legacy while forging his own path, one that resonates with a younger, more diverse audience. What do you think? Can Edward Long truly create his own legacy, or will he always be in his father's shadow? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Stay tuned for our next video.